remember, you remember the day we were supposed to go vote? And I went voted for the young president of the United States.
You did.
And I came back and told you who I voted for.
You did.
And everybody started laughing. You said, stop playing. And I said, no, I'm dead ass serious. You said, Ellis, stop playing right now. I know you joking. You joke, you play all day, Ellis. I'm like, Jazz, I'm not playing. It's like, no, you are playing. I'm like, no, I'm not playing. I voted who I voted for. Why did you do that? Because I voted for my interests. You think I'm gonna put in, such and such in?
So politics is a very touchy subject for me because
it's a touchy subject for our community, period.
100%. The only reason I'm saying is because, as you know,
you worked on Capitol Hill.
I worked on Capitol Hill, and I have a degree in political science, a master's in public policy, so I understand the important role that our government system and structure should play in American lives. I think right now, the question really is, as Americans, do we vote based on our conscience, right? Or do we vote based on our heart? And emotionally,
now mind you, I didn't make an emotional decision.
You didn't, and I think what was so alarming when you voted for the Republican candidate who eventually became president, what was so alarming for me is that I did make an emotional decision. Mm-hmm. And if we can go back throughout the history of voting, I think a lot of African American communities are still married to one party, and their reasons for being married to that party are outdated. And so I guess I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. When it comes to political parties, is there an expiration date for loyalty? Should Black people have an expiration date for being loyal to one party over the other?
That expiration date should have happened 2 centuries ago.
You think we should have stopped voting?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna be
Democrat.
quite blunt. My grandmother told me at the age of, it was between 16 and 18, I can't remember which, but I knew it was either I was about to be able to vote or I was already able to vote, and she said, you only vote Democrat. I said, okay. I said, why? She said, because Democrats are for Black people. Okay. That was the extent of my knowledge of politics.
So
from 18 up until I became an entrepreneur, I only voted one way.
All because your grandmother told you
All
that.
because my grandmother told me that she was the person in my family who was the most influential. She was the person who had the most success. My grandmother was not poor by any show of metric. My grandmother did very well for herself. She was one of the first Black women in the state of Louisiana to be allowed into the surgery room to perform surgery. She was a surgical technician. She was educated. She had a college degree. She crossed. She was a Delta in the 90s. So it's like my grandmother was decorated, traveled the world, went to all different types of places, brought us back trinkets and stories of where she had been. So when she said, you vote this way, I trusted her thought process because of what I seen she had done with her life and where she came from. Because my grandmother was only one generation removed from slavery. Because my great grandmother was white.
Yeah.
Which means what? She was a product of, rape. Mm-hmm. Just call it for what it is.
So I think when it comes to the topic of politics today and the intersection between politics and the economy, they go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And I think it's super important for business owners, it doesn't matter who you are, for anybody watching this to become politically informed, because there are changes happening at this very moment that impact our families. It impacts our dinner tables, it impacts our children's education, healthcare, and so on. So I want to kind of go into the topic because I, very similar to you, have been told to vote based on, this old ideology of if you're black, you vote Democrat, if you're white, you vote Republican.
Yep.
And white equals rich, right? And rich people are mean and they're greedy and they only look out for themselves. And black people, we have to stick together. And it wasn't until my very first day on Capitol Hill, had a chance to see that when it comes to getting inside of those chambers where laws and decisions are being made, you better know how to collaborate with people who don't look like you. You better know how to speak up and advocate on behalf of your constituents, race and gender aside. When we come to the decision-making table, it's issue against issue. And what it should be is what's right and what's wrong. The problem is, in American society, who dictates what's right and who dictates what's wrong? And where does that checks and balances really come into play? I think as American families and communities, I hope that this changes this election year, but we have forgotten the power of our vote.
Absolutely.
I think we need to start exploring more independent candidates. I have been, as you know, a registered independent for nearly 10 years now. There is no one party that I am loyal to. I vote based on policy, not party. And I've done that now for over 10 years. So sometimes that may look like a Republican candidate. Sometimes it may look like a Democratic candidate. And sometimes it looks like an independent candidate, but I make sure I exercise my right to vote every time. So I want to talk about this because, as you know, I'm from Chicago. I love Chicago. But Chicago has been, as we have been for centuries, just kind of top of the chart when it comes to political corruption.
Crook County.
So, as you know, the former governor sold then Senator Obama's seat, right? And he went to jail. You have, right now, we had one mayor who they couldn't wait to get rid of, I think Mayor Lightfoot, and they replaced her with Brandon Johnson. So this is the title. I want to pull up this article from Crane's Chicago Business. Now, anybody watching this and you're in the city of Chicago, you know that when it comes to the economy, local politics, there's probably no other more credible source of news than Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Crane's Business. This is the title, Brandon Johnson and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week.
Damn, that's a line in the sand right there.
And it goes into, ever since he was sworn into office in May, much of Chicago has been carefully watching Mayor Brandon Johnson's performance, trying to figure out whether or not he can really handle the job. So I want to talk about another article that highlights specifically some of his policies and proposals. This is the title of this article. This is from thecityjournal.org. Can Chicago survive Brandon Johnson? This is my people, black Chicagoans who are very loyal. We are loyal to people who look like us because after all, we figure, well, we've had other people who don't look like us in office for so long. They haven't done right by us. But there comes a time where you have to stop voting by the color of someone's skin and you have to vote by what you want done for your family. And if there's no candidate doing it, explore other alternatives. And I'll talk about that in the end. But it says Chicago's new mayor, Brandon Johnson, might drag his city into the urban doom loop.
Damn.
Inheriting a city already in crisis. And they talk about Brandon's plans to soak commuters, businesses, and the ultra rich in taxes. So he wants to increase taxes to quote unquote put money back into underserved communities.
Right.
He has claimed that defunding the police is an actual real political goal and promises to splurge on social spending. Where are you getting this money from? Mr. Johnson, where are you getting the money from to splurge on social spending? More importantly, with the influx of migrants coming from Texas and everywhere else, who is paying for this? So if your solution is to make the rich or ultra wealthy pay higher taxes to pay for your programs, that's not a solution that's long-term sustainable. You can actually motivate, Mr. Johnson, businesses to leave the city of Chicago and go where there are more favorable political policies or economic policies. I don't know, Austin, Texas, isn't that what Elon Musk just did? So I think that Brandon has to be very careful if his political strategy is just to raise taxes, because you will, let me be very clear. Entrepreneurship is the engine of the American economy. Entrepreneurship is the engine of the American economy. Entrepreneurship is the engine of American economy. After all, where do job opportunities come from? Business owners. And so if you are taxing the wealthy people to the point where you're motivating them to leave, you're draining income. You're draining revenue into this great city that I love so much. And more importantly, Brandon, who told you to just have an open house to all of these migrants? I think that that's so inconsiderate, and I don't know who you're trying to win over, but something tells me you did not go from district to district, speaking with representatives, speaking with local aldermen, getting their opinion on this. And yes, I already know you're not going to get everybody to be favorable on any one policy or bill, but when it comes to sucking the city of Chicago's titty dry, I think you should have taken the time to survey the other elected officials. Because isn't that what you did to get voted in? But that's what all politicians do. This is not me taking a shot at Brandon Johnson. I think every political official, I personally feel like there should be a maximum length of time that elected officials are able to serve. And for me, it should be no more than 8 years. After every 8 years, it should be a requirement that you give up your political seat. Because what tends to happen is you have seen way too much happen. You owe favors to other politicians, and now it's no longer about the people and doing what's in their best interest. It's all about you maintaining power and control. And how can I ultimately gain alliances on Capitol Hill? That's been my experience, Ellis. That's why I always vote based on my conscience. I vote based on what's best for my family and where we are in life. I do not believe that to solve any social crisis, the solution is to raise taxes. I think we need to start examining where we spend our money. You used to work in transportation. I was highly annoyed when I saw that you had billion-dollar contracts where at the end of every year, they would buy all kind of frivolous things to make sure that that money didn't go to waste.
Correct.
And I would get up every day and I would drive to the south side of Chicago and I would walk inside of that school and I would see students without books and without winter coats and with holes in their shoes. And they're eating stale bread for lunch. And I would go home and I would listen to my husband say how they had a surplus of $3.2 million in transportation. So they were gonna go buy more wire. That's yes. So I don't wanna hear, I no longer accept that excuse from politicians that we don't have the money and where are we going to get the money from if we don't raise taxes?
It's a big one.
Well, I don't know. How about we start reprioritizing? Why is transportation? You guys have been fixing the roads for 100 years. Why are we putting billions of dollars in fixing potholes? And I'm not saying potholes aren't important, but why are they taking priority over feeding and educating our youth? We have to really take a look at this. And this is why one day I may run for office.
I think a lot of people would love that, just considering your genuineness, your political background, working on Capitol Hill, your degree, master's, right? You're definitely educated and fit for it, and not corrupt, I might add. Not corrupt. But a couple of things I wanted to point out, because I know I got some people in the beginning like, oh, he one of them. Actually, I'm not, because again, I was taught from an early age just to vote one way with no back. And also you have too, by the way, been taught just to vote one way because that's what we did for so long, and not knowing the history of it. And by the way, I don't think one party is better than the other. I don't think Republicans are better than Democrats, and neither Dems better than Republicans. They both corrupt. They both in bed together, right? You know, they both got masks on. They both playing the game. They all playing us, right?
Let me quickly interject. Hold your thought, okay? This is why, to Ellis's point of both parties being corrupt, it's important that you start voting for your family. Like, vote for your family. Vote for your family. Ask the tough questions. Go to the city meetings. Go to them. Schedule a meeting with the people who are running for office. Get to know them. You do know that the number one thing they want is to get elected. They signed up to serve the people that they represent. Go schedule a meeting and talk to them. Ask them, this is what my family is going through. This is what my neighborhood is going through. And I wanted to just stop you there because everything shifted for me when I stopped voting based on what my grandmother did, and I started voting for my family. And every year, the season in which my family is in can change. And not just my family, but other families that look like me.
Now, mind you, but my decision when I voted for Trump was based upon my family. And at that time, I was a new budding entrepreneur. And at that time, I needed the most money in my pocket to help my family. And that individual was more so benefited in helping our business owners to pay less in taxes. And for all my black folk out there watching this right now, any black person that you know right now that runs a business and you start talking to them about this, you'll find out what their true thoughts are and who they actually voted for, because they made a business decision. Do I agree with any of the things that comes out on a personal level of that individual? No. For the most part, if he could have kept his mouth shut, nobody would have really complained about him. But he was just obviously very arrogant, and a lot of things that he said just emotionally didn't connect. But I overlooked my emotion to make a business decision for my family.
Which is what our other counterparts have done for centuries.
Absolutely.
And the way that they have been able to manipulate and control the black community is they pull on our heartstrings. Every year around election season, watch they do, there's some form of reparations. They're gonna give us another $4,000 check. And
And Joe Biden got on TV and said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
What's the guy named Ellis? No Limit. Master P. I don't know how it slipped my mind, but when Master P said, he said when that white man offered me $1 million, my brother told me, man, you a fool. You should have taken it. Why you didn't take that money? He said, man, if he offered me $1 million, what you think I'm worth? I gotta be worth 40 or 50.
Yep.
So I think sometimes we gotta humble ourselves as a community and get to the table so that we can learn the topics being discussed, learn the tools, the tricks, the formulas, and then you go build your own table. This is why it's so important for black entrepreneurs and business owners to support one another when they can. And I'm not saying, guys, because Keith Lee has unveiled a whole nother, you know what I mean? Like when it's quality service, obviously, but you should.
Shout out to Keith Lee, #1, New Orleans. Appreciate you, brother.
But okay, you were finishing a statement.
I was, but just to go back to kind of your point too as well, and when you're talking about black business owners, and what I have found, and since we've been here in Atlanta, is that business owners are definitely open, to helping each other out. I haven't met one black business owner yet that hasn't taken the time to talk with me, share perspective. It may not be an hour conversation, but just the openness, just to even have that beginning conversation has been very exciting and refreshing, because all we got is each other. You think about it, you need to find a tribe. And so if you're watching this and you got your nose turned up because we're talking about something that you're not comfortable with, you don't agree with, then you may have to take a look at your bank account, because that person or that party that's throwing you stimulus money to keep you quiet and keep voting that way. Well, how much money are they continuing to gain for their families and their communities? Because one of the problems in the black community, I just looked this up, in the state of Illinois, for example, which is a big lottery state, right? But the city of Chicago is the most segregated city in America. All right, the north side is typically where your white demographic lives. Your west side is where black folk live, and then on the south side is black folks, and then you got spots where you got, Chinatown, you got the
Little
Polish
Italy,
area,
Greek
Little
town.
Italy, Greek town, the Jewish area of town, the Mexican side of town. So it's extremely segregated, right? And but the majority of the income that comes to lottery comes from the black communities. And I was looking at an article here that stated that pretty much $20 million plus comes from the black community yearly on lottery. So how is it that the city is saying that they don't have any money? Oh, but this money is supposed to be used for education, yet the majority of the schools on the south side and on the west side they're the same buildings that was constructed in like the 30s and the 50s. No central air, no heating, toilets, the plumbing is old as dirt, no books, right? No new desks. Teachers are having to make do with what teachers are spending money that they don't have to try to provide for kids that's not their children when the state should be helping them. And I was reading here, oh man, I was scrolling, I lost my spot, but it was talking about how people think that the additional money from the lottery is supposed to supplement the income that they already have for the public school system. Nope, it's not that way. The budget is the budget. And so even if there is extra, they're not giving extra to help the community, to help the schools. They're not doing it. So where is the money going, is the question. Because there's a lot of money coming in just from here from the lottery. And just like Jazz was talking about, when I was a part of the public sector and a lot of the money for transportation comes from government, right? Whether it's federal or state, they have to keep spending the money in order to keep getting the same amount of hire during the next year. And so a lot of times we would do projects that were just temporary. And those jobs were millions of dollars for a Band-Aid fix that could have been going to the school systems to help our children.
I think, I've often thought about, because as you know, I'm not one to just go back and forth and discussing the problems. I really always want to say, so what is the solution? And one of my favorite quotes is, when decisions are being made, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And that means your interests, your family, your values are not represented at the table in terms of a decision-making seat, which means you're on the menu. Something that you love, something that you care about is on the chopping board. It's about to get eaten, whether it's budgetary cuts, something that's important to you, because there's no representation from your community at the decision-making table. And so how can we begin to change that, right? How can we get more of us at the decision-making table? I think it comes down to more of us stepping up and being willing to have the tough conversations of what change really looks like when it comes to public safety, public education, public health, affordable housing. Our cities are being riddled with food deserts. We don't have access to quality food. The obesity levels are through the roof. Financial literacy rates are the lowest as they've ever been. And so then what is the solution? I think we need more genuinely concerned parents at these tables running for office. I think right now we have a lot of baby boomers and beyond holding these political seats. And by the way, we're seeing that start to change, but for the most part, when we examine the Senate and the House of Representatives, a lot of these people have occupied these seats for decades. So they are still creating laws and making decisions and providing solutions based on the world in 1970 and 1960. Why are you still in office? This is 2023, and China has a massive competitive advantage on us, where our kids are being exposed to TikTok and the newest dance routines. Their children are taking over STEM. They're building cars, building robots that can talk and apparently make babies. And we're all sitting here distracted by our emotional traumas. Yes, it happened. It is a fact. But what are we gonna do now about it? It's time that we move past financial literacy and step into financial power. And it's gonna take more of us, I'm putting myself in this with you guys, to run for office and say enough is enough. It's gonna take a selfless leader, somebody willing to take the sacrifice, because it's not gonna pay as much money. It's not as glamorous. You're gonna be talked about, you're gonna be ridiculed, you're gonna be picked apart. But you need to come into the role with a sincere heart to listen to the problems that are plaguing these communities, to collaborate with key stakeholders within those communities to develop some form of accountability, galvanize resources. And I just believe that we are so much stronger together as we navigate this journey of political change. But, this is an election year, and mark my words, the emotional strings will be pulled. We will be distracted. And
I'm letting you know I ain't voting for Uncle Joe.